Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna
Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Well, welcome to all. Thank you very much for coming. I suppose I should close that curtain behind me. Hold on. Okay, the effulgence is gone. Thank you all for being here. And special thanks to Haridas Prabhu and Meena and Lalit Prasad. And I see that Tulsi Priya says we're at Adi 2.6. I had my
I hope I'm not mistaken. I do a bookmark at the end of the class, but maybe we weren't through with the purport yet on 2.5.
now somehow I'm all the way at 2.10.
Well,
but all right, let's go.
Oh wait, no, you're right. But somehow I think I skipped up a bookmark.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. Okay, I'll change that.
All right. So we're at Adi Leela chapter 2, text number 10. You can decide which lighting you like better, today's or the Brahmajyoti effulgent and fluorescent lamp of yesterday. Neither are very good. They're not really balanced, but we invite comments later. It's not the most important thing. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale. Mayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadhati Supadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam. Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sivivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Pradeshana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Deen Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Odi Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Akasha Visheshateha Dharitin Nam Brahma Paramatma Ar Swayam Bhagavan. We should, well, in terms of his various manifestations, he is known in three features, called the impersonal Brahma, the localized Paramatma, and the original personality of Godhead. Backing up here for context, we can remember that Kaviraj Goswami is explaining his introductory verses to Chaitanya Caritamrta, and now specifically he's explaining this verse, Yada Dvaitam Brahmopanishadi Tada Pyasya Tunupha Ya Atmantar Yami Purusha Iti So Syam Savipavaha Shadaishvaryai Purno Yahiha Bhagavan Sasvayam Mayam Na Chaitanyat Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha. Adi 1:3. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahma is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord known as the Supersoul is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with 6 opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. So that's the verse that Kaviraj Goswami is explaining. Now let's look at the purport. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained the word Bhagavan in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. The personality of Godhead, being full of all conceivable and inconceivable potencies, is the absolute supreme whole. Impersonal Brahma is a partial manifestation of the absolute truth, realized in the absence of such complete potencies. The Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate, the absolute truth, is stated in the Upanishads to have a variety of potencies. So that presence of potent and potencies indicates variety, indicates something other than homogeneous oneness. All of the all the varieties of the material world and the spiritual world, as well as the innumerable living entities, appear by virtue of these potencies. So, in the absence of those potencies, we get essentially nothing, or we get, well, in the Buddhist notion, we get nothing, and in the Advaitavad, we get next to nothing. We get an impersonal whiteboard almost, except that white is a quality, with nothing on it, just oneness, 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 and oneness. So the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is full of potencies. And when we don't realize those potencies, or in the absence of those potencies, then you have the impersonal Brahman. So the impersonal Brahman, you can say, is an attenuated realization of the absolute truth, a stripped down version of the absolute truth, a version of the absolute truth in which variety is excluded, or a realization, an approach, an angle of vision on the absolute truth, in which variety is kept to the side, and then all we have is this glow. First syllable of the word Bhagavan is Pa, which means sustainer and protector. The next letter, Ga, means leader, pusher, and creator. Va means dwelling. All living beings dwell in the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord dwells within the heart of every living being. Combining all these concepts, the word Bhagavan carries the import of inconceivable potency in knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority. Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. Our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. We can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. If one considers the intelligence needed to orbit man-made satellites, one cannot be fooled into thinking that there's not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of the various planetary systems. There's no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in the Bhagavad Gita 15:13, where the personality of Godhead says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy, they stay in orbit. Were the planets not held in the grip of the personality of Godhead, they would all scatter like dust in the air. Modern scientists can only impractically explain this inconceivable strength of the personality of Godhead. So Srila Jiva Goswami is breaking down the word Bhagavan into 3 letters, Ha, Ga, and Va, and explaining characteristics associated with each. The summary being that he has inconceivable qualities, inconceivable potencies, and that he's the controller of everything. And Srila Prabhupada gives the cosmological argument that we can't have, that in our ordinary experience, we see that things go on by supervision of superior intelligence. So how can we think that the great affairs of the universe go on automatically without intelligent control? And Prabhupada cites the existence of gravitational force as an example of the influence of the personality of Godhead. The scientists can't really explain why there's a law of gravity. There's a law of this, there's a law of that, there are laws of nature. But ultimately, why should there be laws of nature? Why should there be laws of nature? So somehow or other, it's just these things are there, elements are there, or black holes, or singularities, or this or that, and things go bang. I'm just an ignorant layman. I don't understand all the things that they say, pardon me. But in any case, it all falls short because it gives us no picture of what the ultimate origin is. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Vedanta Sutra says, now it's time to inquire about the absolute truth. And that absolute truth is Janmadhyasya, the source of everything. So modern science doesn't really explain the source of everything. It just goes within its own domain and sometimes pretends to be able to explain where everything comes from, but really can't. Any comments or questions so far? Yes, Mr. Kendra.
Oh, thank you so much, Maharaj. I was considering how you have spoken to so many people over the years, and a lot on these very points that Prabhupada raises. And I've put highlighter on a couple of passages that satisfy me that there's no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. That's satisfying to me, but I can't even pretend to be a very ambitious or determined atheist. And I'm wondering if such arguments that satisfy a low grade, someone of a low grade atheistic mentality, what would a really good determined atheist say in response to that? And then how would you counter that? I guess is what I'm wondering.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, for a really determined atheist, no amount of Vedic wisdom will be effective. They've already taken a vow, essentially, to be skeptical of anything that has the slightest scent of theism to it, and therefore they're called mudha. Namam dushkrita namudha kapadyante, and maya pratyajnana, those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. As far as what would they say, maybe Doug, can you tell us what they say? What would a hard-nosed reductionistic scientist say in response to Srila Prabhupada's challenge here?
Doug's not here right now. It's just Arnand's.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay, well, you're not a substitute. Sorry about that. Okay. The typically they'll go on the offensive. You know, why should there be a God? Why should we believe in a God? Da 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 da. But they can't really defend, as far as I've seen, their own viewpoint. So they attack yours. And the, you know, why should we believe in a little, you know, blue cowherd boy and this and that and the other thing? You know, does it mean that we have to wear clay on our noses and go back to medieval times? They typically, and you'll see this a lot if you read. It's interesting. There's a group of people called skeptics, that is, who call themselves skeptics, and they have periodicals like the Skeptical Inquirer, and they have skeptical conferences, and they have a skeptic dictionary, and skeptic this and skeptic that, but they're not really skeptical, or they're not uniformly skeptical. They apply skepticism to anything that has any sort of theological or spiritual content. Anything paranormal tends to be dealt with the utmost skepticism. Anything with any spiritual component, that we deal with skeptically. And skeptically, you know, it's some sort of cultural trait, means with derision and mockery and derision and mockery and sarcasm. So they delight in that sort of rhetoric, but then they don't apply that skepticism to their own dogmas. It's, you know, they advertise themselves as skeptics. They've appropriated, or what's the word, co-opted the term skeptic, but they're not genuine. They're not genuine. Really, they're atheists who've adopted the more attractive term skeptic. And so typically that's what you'll find them doing is mocking the opposition and trying to reduce everything spiritual to absurdity. But when they're on the defensive, they're rather stuck. That's what I've seen. They're rather stuck. They can't really, and then they go into dishonesty sometimes, and what have you. But simple, like Prabhupada was always pleased with Swarup Damodar Maharaj for asking that scientist, if I gave you all the elements you wanted, could you produce life? And the eminent scientist said, that I do not know. That I do not know. So really what we're looking at, it seems, is well, as Prabhupada said, stubborn obstinacy. Just averse to the idea of a personality of Godhead. But they can't really answer the question of where everything comes from, or why their laws of nature should exist. And they say different things. Stephen Gould says there's two domains, the domain of science and the domain of religion, and each has its own jurisdiction. And then there are others who disagree with him and say, no, science is, everything has to be explained. And so we need science, which is the only way to explain it rationally. They're not unsophisticated. And then there are those who may be a little open and say, yeah, we don't know. We can't answer those questions. So it depends on their, what shall we say, what atheistic church they belong to. Murari Gupta says, one argument that they try to float is that if God has existed eternally for no reason, why can't the laws of nature? There's no need to make it more complicated with speculations about a God. Well, that's fair. You know, okay, why should there be an eternally existing God? Why not eternally existing laws of nature? Prabhupada starts that way. He says, you know, we're going to look at what the origin of everything is. And then the first question is, should the origin of everything be conscious or not conscious? And then you get, if they float the idea of eternally existing laws of nature, why should they exist? Why should they be simple? Why should they result in such quite amazing things as living beings? How do we explain? What do we do about things that don't seem amenable to explanation by the laws of material nature, particularly consciousness? We have what one scientist, philosopher called the hard problem of consciousness. Why should it be there? And there's been considerable evidence, or indicating that the laws of nature are just not adequate to describe consciousness. So then you wind up with consciousness as being as irreducible as the laws of nature. And if there's a small consciousness, why should there not be a greater consciousness? That's a big, if there's eternally existing, and Prabhupada, which is a more, even taking Occam, a more natural and parsimonious explanation for the existence of everything, that you somehow or other have simple laws and simple initial conditions giving rise to these enormously complicated entities, or that there's an intelligent direction making these things happen. In our common experience, it's all Prabhupada invokes. In our common experience, it's always intelligent direction. So why, as we go up to a higher level of existence, should things just be a result of random material events with, grand scales of improbability? So these are some thoughts. It's an interesting conversation, by the way, where Prabhupada's making these points. He's arguing there must be a God. Then for some of the reasons that he's given in the purport and elsewhere, there must be a God. He's arguing with some guests. And then the person with whom he's speaking, it's a conversation in this room, person says, yes, but why must Krishna be God? And Prabhupada said, that we can talk about later. Krishna may or may not be God. My point is that there must be God. It's a beautiful example of not allowing your interlocutor to throw a red herring in and to basically try to derail the argument by bringing up a different one. Prabhupada's point is that there must be a God. And when he's stuck, when the person he's speaking to is stuck, then he tries to jump to something else. Yes, but why must Krishna be God? And Prabhupada doesn't give him the opportunity to get away with that. Prabhupada says that we can talk about later. Krishna may or may not be God. My point is that there must be God. So that, again, he's sticking it to him. There must be God. What is your counter argument? There must be God. So it's, so then they come up with that. Well, why must Krishna be God? Why must Jesus? Why must this? Why must that? Because they're cornered. So Prabhupada says, Krishna may or may not be God. My point is, Tulsi Priya says, how is the idea of a supreme person less complicated than an orderly set of natural laws without a creator? Well, the problem is that your orderly set of natural laws are inadequate. They can't really explain why you get an orderly universe and why you get consciousness in particular. It looks, we'd like to make it all very simple. And Sadaputta Prabhu addresses this in his mechanistic and non-mechanistic science. You want simple boundary conditions, simple backgrounds, and simple laws. And from this, you want to derive something complex. And he demonstrates mathematically by using what's called information theory that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's, like if you may say you see a house with windows and shutters and chimneys and all of that. And you say, well, the simple explanation is that the windows and the chimneys and the shutters and foundation, they all just assemble themselves by simple laws of nature. There's no need to invoke anything supernatural here, like consciousness. But it actually is a simpler explanation that there's some intelligent person who hired an intelligent architect and brought in the cash and brought in the contractors and built the house. And that's, of course, invoking this notion of some sort of conscious controller, but that's simpler, ultimately. It explains things. Whereas your explanation of just natural processes, it's very unlikely, but it just so happened. We hear that a lot, right? That it's the chances of a universe like ours appearing are extremely slight, but it just so happened. Why not just take what's more sensible, what's more sensible, more natural, that someone put it together, and that's why it is like that. That's what works within our experience, and why should that not work beyond our experience? Okay, then there's, chat box is busy here. The Saraswati says, sort of taking us a little afield, but reincarnation is also an aggressively disputed fact in most other religions too. Yeah, so many things they'll dispute because it doesn't fit with their picture. But of course, here we're talking about the source of everything. But again, we can say those who simply accept Vedic knowledge get knowledge unavailable to those who take a speculative method or rely on less detailed spiritual literature. Being quoting from Srila Prabhupada, and if someone starts to agree there is God, this is from Lilamrita, another sannyasi challenged that the Krishna conscious version was dogmatic, since there were many truths and many gods, but the absolute truth is one. Srila Prabhupada replied, because God is one, God has no competitors. If a person does not accept Krishna as God, then he has to present someone else, someone who is more fully God than Krishna. But if someone does not know who is God, then that person cannot deny Krishna. If you speak that way, Prabhupada continued, then you are being dogmatic. You do not know what God is, yet dogmatically you are saying that Krishna is not God. Yes, thank you. Tulsi Priya.
Maharaj, I think sometimes one problem with the materialistic scientists is that they want to figure out everything on their own. They like the ascending process, and we accept the descending process. And so because they can't figure it out via the ascending process, they look down on us because we just accept it on authority that, let's say, Krishna is God. And one time, maybe you can tell me if this is a worthwhile argument or not. I asked somebody, I said, how do you know there was ever such a person as George Washington? And they said, well, I learned about it in the history books. It's part of our history, you know. And I said, well, it's the same with Krishna. We learned about it in books, you know, we learned about it in books and from a chain of disciplic succession. But 5,000 years from now, how could you ever prove that there was a person such as George Washington? You know, it's you have to depend on you know, descending process, because there's no way in 1,000 or 5,000 years that you could really determine whether George Washington existed or if he was just a legend or what. So I was wondering if you think that's a worthwhile argument.
Yeah, they accept the descending process. Just to read their books, they had to accept the descending process. The teacher said, this is a B, and this is a D, this is a P, and this is a Q. So they accepted that. They didn't try to take some sort of empiric method of determining whether that was true. They accepted it, and that's how they learned to read. Apart from that, they accept things. You know, there's like observations from the Hubble telescope, or there's you know, so much other information. They haven't done, you know, the person you're talking to, he hasn't done that research. He doesn't know what the Hubble telescope showed. He doesn't know these figures or those figures. He's accepting his authority. Whatever journal he reads, he has faith that that journal is reporting legitimate research. And he has other kinds. He generally really has faith in the people he's listening to, that whoever it might be is a brilliant scientist, and so we accept his findings. And okay, but then you also sort of accept his theology, not perhaps recognizing his biases. And now you're no longer in the realm of taking empiric data anymore. You're in the descending line from people who are giving you skewed data, skewed data according to their own convictions. And you're not skeptical enough of the inadequacies of what you're being told. The classic bacterium for discussion in science is your E. coli, for various reasons. But E. coli at the time of Darwin, or what have you, if E. coli was even well understood or understood at all back then, was thought to be extremely simple. You know, there's an outer membrane, the cell wall. There's a nucleus with a couple things in it. and there's, sort of soupy stuff filling up the rest of the organism, and that's E. coli. And it's pretty simple to explain. And we can imagine it perhaps forming from chemical combinations. But subsequent scientific research, subsequent scientific findings haven't made life easier for the reductionists. It's actually made it harder, because now E. coli turns out to be more complex than New York City. All the various components found in even that simplest of cells, of one-celled organisms. And now you have to explain something. You have to explain your theory with this existing data has to account for the facts. It can't just be a nice, simple explanation that makes everything easy and doesn't rely on anything mystical. But apart from all those good things, it has to explain how an organism more complex than the city of New York evolves from hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen with maybe some cosmic rays or what have you, helping the process along. You can't just ignore that data. You have to account for it. That's Occam again. The simplest explanation is to be preferred, but it has to be added. The simplest theory is to be preferred, but it has to be adequate to account for the data. And they don't do that. So again, our dismissive quote from Personality of Godhead is Mam Duskrita Namuta, that they're fools, that they're Maya Pratagana, that their knowledge has been stolen by illusion, that really their insistence on this godlessness is really a manifestation of stubborn obstinacy, not of intelligent, skeptical, what's the word? Discrimination. Okay, the smartest among them do have their arguments, and I can't say what the best of them might be, but I haven't seen anything that makes me say, oh, wow, I got it wrong. What will they come up with? We'll see, Priya. Is that a new hand or is that the old hand?
That's all, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we read a little more? The potencies of the syllables pa, ga, and va, the constituent potencies of Bhagavan, constituent syllables of Bhagavan, apply in terms of many different meanings. Through his different potent agents, the Lord protects and sustains everything. But he himself personally protects and sustains only his devotees, just as a king personally sustains and protects his own children, while entrusting the protection and sustenance of the state to various administrative agents. Krishna is personally, ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, maite te suchatyam. He's equal to everyone. He has his potencies taking care of everyone, but he's personally protecting and sustaining his devotees. The Lord is the leader of his devotees, as we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, which mentions that the personality of Godhead personally instructs his loving devotees how to make certain progress on the path of devotion and thus surely approach the kingdom of God. Dadami Buddhi. The Lord is also the recipient of all the adoration offered by his devotees, for whom he is the objective and the goal. For his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of Godhead. He doesn't create that condition for the avowed materialists. Sometimes he does this by taking away a devotee's material attachments by force and baffling all his material protective agents. For thus, the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. The Lord is not directly attached to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, for he's eternally busy in the enjoyment of transcendental bliss with paraphernalia composed of his internal potencies. Yet, as the initiator of the material energy, as well as the marginal potency, the living beings, he expands himself as the Purusha avatars who are invested with potencies similar to his. Purusha avatars are also in the category of Bhagavat Tattva, because each and every one of them is identical with the original form of the personality of Godhead. The living entities are his infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with him. They are sent into this material world for material enjoyment to fulfill their desires to be independent individuals. But still, they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. The Lord deputes himself in the state of supersoul to supervise the arrangements for such material enjoyment. The example of a temporary fair is quite appropriate in this connection. If the citizens of a state assemble in a fair to enjoy for a short period, the government deputes a special officer to supervise it. Such an officer is invested with all government power, and therefore he is identical with the government. When the fair is over, there's no need for such an officer, and he returns home. The Paramatma is compared to such an officer. We see this in the Kumbh Mela. They pull out a whole police force from the total police, and they, under the direction of someone who's the chief officer, they supervise this gathering of millions of people. And there's a huge police presence. And then after the Kumbh Mela ends, all those officers and policemen join the total force again. So the Lord deputes himself as the super soul for the time being, and then when there's no need, super soul is no longer manifest. The living beings are not all in all. They are undoubtedly parts of the Supreme Lord and are qualitatively one with him. Yet they are subject to his control. Thus, they are never equal to the Lord or one with him. that verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita from 11th canto, I think. My Lord, if the living entities were all pervading and all powerful like you, there'd be no meaning to your being the personality of Godhead. But they're not. The Lord who associates with the living being is the Paramatma, or supreme living being. No one, therefore, should view the tiny living beings and supreme living being to be on an equal level. The all-pervading truth that exists eternally during the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world in which the living beings rest in trance is called the impersonal Brahman. Well, we have busy chat box again. Venkatesh says, does the Lord personally protect only his associates like the Pandavas and fully surrendered devotees? To what extent does the Lord personally help a neophyte progressing devotee? The Lord helps them also. The Lord is ye bhajanti tamam bhaktya. He inclined to it his devotees, bhakta vatsalam. But ye yatamam prapadyante. He, according to the degree of our surrender, he reciprocates. The more we turn toward him, the more he gives attention to us. But it doesn't mean that if we're not on the highest platform, then we're just ignored. The Lord gives attention even to the beginner. And he deputes himself in the form of the spiritual master to help the beginning devotee. So he's not at all unconcerned. He gives scripture, he gives the association of sadhus, he gives the spiritual master. So even the neophyte devotee has the benefit of the care of the personality of Godhead. And then the Lord is there as super soul also to help him along. Rabin says, argument. The idea of existence of personality as cause of the universe is sparking from family beliefs and traditional cultures. This is immediately an invalid argument. It's called a genetic fallacy. It's a genetic fallacy. You're not dealing with the argument, you're dealing on where it comes from. Oh, the Republicans say that, or the goofballs say that, or the conspiracy theorists say that, or the Hare Krishnas say that. And then we give some motive because they can't give up this notion, or because they can't give up that notion, or because they're working from this cultural background, or like, those are all invalid arguments, just formally speaking. In their very form, they're invalid. Deal with what we're saying. Maybe I'm saying it because I come from Mars and the men on Mars think that this is a good idea. Doesn't matter. Where I got the idea, why I hold on to it is irrelevant. We have to deal with the argument. The complexity of existence does not show nor prove the presence of a personality, but a need for more research and study. Okay, let's accept that. It needs more research and study. So study this. Okay, we've demonstrated a need for more research and study. So do more research and study. We have Srimad Bhagavatam. We have, even by your own intelligence, study this. Study consciousness. Don't just drop it off to the side and say, no. Because of your preconceived reductionistic bias, study it. Science has made progress in newer fields and shall make progress further in discovering newer secrets of our universe. But the idea of a personality neither helps the progress of science nor can be proven. The idea of a personality doesn't help science. All right, let's start at a smaller level. Deal with consciousness. Science has to deal with, again, the data, the phenomena. So you deal with consciousness, study that. What is that? Nasato vidite bhavo vidite sataha, ubhayor api drishtontas, 20os tattva-darshabhi. Tattva-darshabhi, we translate as seers of the truth, but tat can, and twa means, as Ravindra Sri Prabhu likes to point out, it means ness, as in richness or other kinds of nesses. So tattva means thatness. Tattva, the nature of existence. So the tattva-darshis are those who've examined the very nature of existence, or thatness, even the components of existence. And they've concluded that there are two things. There's that which continues to exist and that which only comes and goes. The matter comes and goes, and consciousness persists, as we see in our own life. The body comes and goes, but consciousness, within our lifetime, consciousness persists. So those who've studied Ubhayorapi Drishta Anta, all the way to the end, those who've taken the study all the way to where it naturally leads, they've concluded that there are two elements of existence. That which exists and that which does not exist. Existent means permanently existent, and non-existent means coming and going. So, all right, we'll accept that you have a scientific brain. Therefore, we've created a Bhaktivedanta Institute to engage in study and dialogue on these understandings or these approaches, or in dealing with these basic questions, which are not simply settled by a reductionistic bias or by insisting that everything has to be proven this way, that way. All right, we accept that there's the idea of a personality. It certainly helps. It's an explanation. You may like it, you may not like it, you may accept it, you may not accept it, but it certainly explains a lot. It may be the wrong explanation, all right, but it certainly has powerful explanatory value. So just to dismiss it and say it doesn't help the progress of science. If you mean your technology is the value of it, the what shall we say, the benefit of it in an ultimate sense is certainly up for question. Your what you offer in the name of progress seems to create more and more problems. You create atomic energy, and then you create waste that nobody can figure out how to dispose of. You create wonderful things like plastics, from which we can make so many useful things, but which can't be disposed of. You get now, we're hearing microplastics, which enter into everything, everywhere, and cause harm. So simply that science has brought about a wonderful world where everything is so much better and better and better. It needs to be seriously questioned. Well, there's more arguments where all of these came from on both sides, but we're out of time, and so we're going to stop here. And our bookmark goes to 11. And well, do we still have time for a couple minutes of kirtan? Do we? We do. And those who have to leave can leave, but we can do a little kirtan for a couple of minutes. I think it's good. All right, since everyone's volunteering. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Panamansa Parivraj Acharya Stotra Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Adanta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamana Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bo.
Gurudev.
Hare Krishna, Lakshmana.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, thank you. Hare Krishna, Meena. Hare
Haribo.
Krishna. Haribo, Haribo.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So we can close up shop.
¿En qué
Thank
país
you.
estás, Maharaj?
Excuse me?
¿En qué país estás?
Oh, estoy en Panamá. Y
No diga. Fantástico.
en el lunes voy a Costa Rica para una semana.
¿Y vas a ir a Colombia?
No,
¿Piensas ir a
esta vez,
Colombia? Esta vez no.
esta vez no. No.
Bueno. Bueno.
Otra
Feliz
vez quizás.
noche. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Gracias a ustedes.
Gracias.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for doing these Zoom classes. Thank you so much.
It's my good fortune. You're all getting your company and you're keeping me off the street and engaged in Krishna Katha, and it's so wonderful. If I were just here alone, it would be no fun at all.
Oh,
It's the association of you devotees that makes everything successful.